Kami tu tahi kia koe roja. Au i tu inakalaki hei whakatuwhera I tēnei hui. I tēnei ataka. Ko te atua te mui a tātou I ngā wā katoa. Nānei honga tēnei rā atāhua te a tātou. Ana ana hoki whakawā te tu huara hi tau. I hara mai tata, I hara mai tapu. Hoi a kei mui a tātou e tia ki ana I a tātou I te pō, I te ao, I te ao, I te pō. Taino ki tēnei wā. Nō reira kia whakatapu iaia I ngā wā katoa. A te hua. E ala mai ana rātau I tēnei wā. Nā rātau tēnei kaupapa I hari. Nā rātau tēnei kaupapa I kaue. Taino ki tēnei wā, ko tātou tēnei I tēnei rā. Nō reira nā mate katoa, kei runga I a tātou. Mai ngā kuri a whāre ki te hera. Ara kei popeke te tahi e takoto ana I tēnei wātunu. Ko tahi noho te kōrena mō rātau. Haere rā koutou, haere. Mai mai ro te tamainga ro tēnei. Ara ka hoki mai kia tātou e hui nei I tēnei ata. E hui nui tēnei. E hui kia ata, kia tautarangi māria ki mainga nui a tātou. Me tuku I nā whakaaro I runga te aroha. E hui ra hiti kai. Nui tēnei mō tātou. Kare he nui kei nā kore oi, e whakatau ana I a tātou I tēnei rā. Kuri noa, kia ora. Kia ora mai anō rā tātou.
Te aroha, te whakapono, te kia rātau. Tāpiti whango tātai hono anei rā tātou e katua nei te huarai tika hai haere mā tātou. Huri noa, kia ora mai anō rā tātou. Kāre tino nui te wā kia tātou. Hena kare he tangata e hiana ki te tū, me haere te rapa.
Paki hei mauira, he tika papu tēnei ki te whakapuki ngā mihi kua hiana koe. And it's a privilege to come amongst you to contribute where I can to today's hui and to the hui that are going to be occurring. I am independent of the issues, I am independent of the Crown and of the parties involved. I do have a background in Treaty of Waitangi, Waitangi Tribunal and litigation associated with mandates, with settlements and matters associated with that. So I'm very familiar with the background which brought you here today. And I've been asked by the parties to act as an independent facilitator for today's hui. So just thank you for the welcome. And I'm going to run through some housekeeping matters. We've got a question already from the back.
Sorry Leo, it's just that some of us can't see. I don't mind the flag, but we might need to put it to the side. Can't see the speaker.
The flag.
Are you okay with putting the flag just to the side? The first issue is just to introduce Mairi, who's going to help us with a couple of safety announcements.
Just a few safety things. Our exits are there at the back here, and there's some for you at the back that can go round and in here and out. And the main exit door here. Wharipakas are down to your right. We do have medical staff on board in case of a medical emergency, and the exit point or evacuation point in case of emergency is out here. That's it. Nice and sweet.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Just some other matters I've been asked to run through, please. There is an attendance register, as you know. Please come on and find it. Don't worry. Come on through. Please make sure you've signed the attendance register. That's really important for the people need to be comfortable with that. It's going out to those who are unable to make the hui tinana. So it's really important that we can use that technology to get this spread as wide as possible. So this will be available by way of a YouTube link for accessibility for those who can't make the hui, and that'll be the case for all the other hui as well. I just want to introduce Robin Garrett. If you can just stand and wave at the back. Robin is from elections.com, and she is available here and at all the hui to assist with anything to do with voting. That's nothing to do with me and nothing to do with the parties. It's an independent process. So she's happy to assist you with any queries you might have about voting. Voting is until the 30th of August, 12 p.m. on the 30th of August. So there's still plenty of time. She's got a ballot box there if you wanted to vote today. She's also got these information booklets if you don't have one yourselves or you'd like to take one home to whānau. So she's got spare copies. I'm told that this booklet and the the voting pack, have come out to your various postal boxes. The expectation is that you should be receiving them, if not today, certainly by Monday. So please, a presentation also from the Crown, a short one, and a presentation from the Opotiki Claim Settlement Trust. Those presentations hopefully will provide to give you a really good basis for what's happening. And then there'll be an extensive question and answer session that I will facilitate. So to the greatest extent possible, I would encourage you please to listen to those presentations, leave your questions until you've heard all of the material, and then ask questions then. If there was something really burning in terms of a point of clarification that one of the presentations has raised, and you can't simply wait, do let me know. But I'm pretty confident that for the most part, if you let the presentations run, there will be plenty of chance for the second half of this week to be question and answer. It goes without saying, but I think to have a successful hui, we do need to have a set of parameters around our behaviour. You are perfectly entitled to come up and ask questions when that time is available. You should ask them through me, identify who you want the question to be answered. Perhaps it's a question for the petitioners, Upokorehe, perhaps it's a question for the Crown, perhaps it's a question for the Opotiki Claim Settlement Trust. So it would help me immeasurably, and we ask that you stand up, you give your name, perhaps the hapu affiliations if you wish, and direct your question to who you want it answered by. Please be respectful, play the ball, not the man. There won't be any tolerance for abuse or personal attacks, and I'll be really strict on that. We just don't need it. These issues are really emotive, really important to you. I fully understand that. But please maintain the dignity of this room and the respect we have for our hoia and what this building represents. We do have some kai to follow, so I'm grateful for those who are catering. We're going to have a hard stop just before 1:30 with our karakia, and you're welcome to join the whānau for cup of tea and kai thereafter. Now I say just before 1:30, I know the program has got from 11 to the parties involved, so they know the content, but it was preferable that because it's common ground, I just take you through those slides initially. Thereafter, I'm going to hand to the Upokorehe presenters, who have got about half an hour or so of slides and kōrero to present. Thereafter, we're going to have a short presentation from the Crown, and thereafter the Opotiki Claims Trust will make their presentation. That should probably take us a good hour, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Matua.
My name is Opotiki. I whakapapa to Opotiki. And kōtare. I am of Ngāti Hinanga descent. I'm the rai of Tūranga Pikitoi. And those lands that I have mentioned are too wet. And I don't see why our land are in these settlement claims. We do not whakapapa to Whakapoia. We do not whakapapa to Upokorehe. Why are our lands in the settlement?
So I'm just going to let the question just sit there. Okay, and it's good that you've raised it. It's probably going to get addressed either by way of the presentations, or I'm going to come back to you after and make sure that your question gets answered. Thank you for raising it. I'm not going to start a whole lot of preliminary discussions now. We've got a program to get through, and I just note your question.
That's all I state right now. Right?
Sure.
Those lands are too good. Nothing to do with Upokorehe and Opotiki. Okay?
Good. So that's been heard.
That's all I want to say.
Recorded. Can I ask whoever's running the slide, can you go to the first slide? Do I just... You might have to come up and help me so I can... So Whanau, this first of 4 slides just indicates the timeline of where things have got to since 2016. Is that showing up okay? Okay. With a deed of mandate signed off to the left in 2016, an AIP signed 2017, a report released in 2018, a majority vote in support of Whakatohea Claims Trust to continue to negotiate the settlement, and Upokorehe voting against that in 2018. A parallel process in 2019, and then an urgency inquiry filed in 2020, with the Waitangi Tribunal report released under urgency in 2021. And as part of the deed of mandate, Te Upokorehe submitted their petition to withdraw. There was also the signing of the deed of settlement in 2021, and we've got the mandate hui being held, and this withdrawal process. I just hope, do I point that there? Is that right? What is mandating? It's a process by which the claimant groups choose their own representatives and gives those representatives the authority to enter into negotiations with the Crown for the settlement of your historical claims under Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
I'm going independent on my own.
Kia ora.
What I heard from my spy is if it gets paid out, Whakatohea is going to change their name. So whereabouts what Hapua belongs in here? Of course,
So I was...
can you answer that?
No, I certainly can't.
No. Can you answer it now? I've got to go soon.
Yeah, no, I can't.
It's a name going to change Whakatohea to something else.
But listen, if you have to go, the name...
No.
If you have to go, the name
You should have done your homework before you came here.
the question that you raised will be
You work
answered.
for the government, you get paid by the government.
Sorry. I don't work for the government. I'm an independent solicitor, and my job is to get through the
You
hui.
do, because under the legal agency, the money comes from the government.
The question that you've asked will be answered as part of the presentation, and somebody can make a note of
Take all
that.
that nonsense off. Take all that nonsense off. Is Whakatohea going to have a name change once the settlement comes through?
No.
No, I want it in writing from my cousin, Bob.
Sure. So both of those points that you raised will be answered.
No, it won't be hard to get this right tonight.
First of all, let's listen to it. There will be no change until after the vote. So you have a right to vote, yes to change it, to agree to that.
No, cousin. Now, is Whakatohea going to change their name once they get the settlement, and then cousin Nipa's going to take over?
Okay, part of coming to the hui is participating in the way in which we're going to run. So,
One Whakatoia changed their name. So I'm Whakatoia, I'm Tū Whakatoa, and I'm on my Kutini anyway as well. Now, my wife, she's a Pākehā, but she can't come on the registration. She can't go on the registration, and that's and on their paper, Papa went to Whakatoia. She came. She gave us Whakatoia children. And what's happened? When I read the full print, they're faceless. They're faceless.
Listen, those are very important points.
What is you?
You have to let us get through our hui now.
Where got you from? Where got you from? Are you from here?
If you don't get paid there,
That's not important to me. I can't speak Maori. I speak English with 130,000 words.
That's what I don't mind.
Hey, you don't come out here in Opotiki and stick your nose into it. But where? You go through the history, what people got killed from the Pākehā. Hey,
We hear you, we hear you. I don't mind, come out and have a
don't touch me. Don't touch him. I'll hit you up or something. You want
despite that, I want that question answered by somebody during the hui. I think it's important for the record and Ron Ray and to give respect to his question. Can we please maintain just a sense of how we're going to get through this hui so that everyone gets a chance to ask their questions? All right? Mandating is the process whereby representatives are chosen. The mandate was recognised in 2016, and this amendment process to withdraw a hapu is part of that deed of mandate. It's an accountability mechanism. 2 more slides to go. The Whakatohia deed of settlement now seeks to settle historical claims of those hapu that are listed there on the screen. It was initialled in 2021. There's a remaining step, and that's ratification, so actual formal endorsement by you as a people. This process falls in the middle of that. The Te Upokorehe Treaty Claims Trust has triggered a vote to amend that mandate and remove Te Upokorehe. So what's the process for that under the deed of mandate? A petition is filed, which has happened. That required 5% of adult Whakatohia members to sign. There's been a meeting between the petitioners and the Claims Trust. There have to be at least 5 publicly notified hui. There's a voting process which is occurring now, both postal and online, which must record the primary hapu affiliation of you as voters. That's why there's been an invitation when you stand to speak to indicate your hapu affiliation if you wish to do so. The petitioners then present their report to the Crown, and there is a decision as to whether to change the mandate or to continue to ratification. Koe te pai. Thank you for hearing me out. I welcome now Upokorehe and their representatives to commence with their presentation. I'm going to ask for those who are speaking to really project your voice so that people can hear through the room. The mics are for live streaming, but we've got one here. Oh, do you want to come?
I actually wanted this to...
No, you're mic'd up, so you're already on. We can hear you. All right?
I te whānau o te Upokorehe me te whakatohia. E nā mōrehu o te raupatu. He mihi atu ki a koutou katoa I tēnei ata. Ko waiahau, ko māki o me pukunui o raho o ku maunga. Ko waiawa me waima o ku awa. Ko tū tāmari me rongopopoia o ku whari tipuna. Ko hini I kauia me te haopo aonui, te wharikai me te pātaka kai. Ko Ngāti Rua me rongopopoia o ku hapu. Ko te whakatohia me te Upokorehe o ku iwi. Ko kahukori baika tōku ingoa. Our presentation this morning is on behalf of the Upokorehe petitioners, the 700 or so whānau members of Upokorehe who signed the petition to be withdrawn from the Whakatohia Deed of Mandate and Settlement. We signed that because we didn't want to lose what we currently have. From Upokorehe's perspective, this settlement is going to leave us worse off than we are now. There has been quite a lot of interest about what and who Upokorehe are. That isn't the focus of today's hui. This hui is about the fact Upokorehe want to withdraw from the mandate. We are having a historical hearing next year. We are very much looking forward to that historical hearing because it's the first time Upokorehe is able to put their kōrero down at the Waitangi Tribunal to record our history, our kōrero, on what has happened to Upokorehe and the long history Te Upokorehe has had since the Tipuna Weakeake signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So that process is coming up, and we would like further discussion to be informed by the kōrero of our kaumātua. Kia ora on that kaupapa. The other reason we're here is the Crown's large natural grouping policy. It's a very unnatural grouping policy. We've never supported it. It feels like something from the 1960s where everybody is herded in on the Crown's large natural grouping policy. Now I'll talk about that later because we had an alternative, but the Crown didn't want to know about it. I'd just better get the clicker. Kia ora. So for us, this process is about our upokorehitanga, our rangatiratanga. Since 2010, the Crown has worked against Upokorehe. It has worked against us in two settlements, in the Tūhoe settlement and in the Whakatohia settlement. The Crown and the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust want to initial a settlement, and our people want out of that settlement. Oh, can we have the screen? Thanks, guys. Might need to put it straight on too. Is that better? Can I see it? So, our people filed a petition to be withdrawn from that settlement. So on the 15th of November 2021, Upokorehe put a petition in. We wanted to get that settlement in before the deed was ratified. It was ratified despite our petition, despite the fact the Waitangi Tribunal had said, if you go ahead and ratify without amending the deed of mandate, you'll be in breach of the Treaty of Waitangi Crown. Well, the Crown did go ahead and were in breach of the treaty. So, to remove Te Upokorehe, we had to get a total of 5% of adult voters on the Whakatohia roll. So in May, we found out that was 572. And then after we got our petition, we met with Whakatohia at Roimata Marae and we verified the petition. We went through it and verified it. And these hui and the vote that's coming to us is the result of this process. So after that, Te Upokorehe get to write a report once we've had this vote, and that report then goes to the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust to decide whether they will withdraw Te Upokorehe, and they will discuss that with the Crown. Now, you see up there, and I hope you can all read that despite the light, the report must contain copies of the public notices, and the attendance register, so please sign the attendance register. The minutes, we've got our minute taker up there on the table, kia ora, and other related information. And then if we get taken out, we get taken out. If we don't get taken out, we all go to ratification. As you can see, Te Upokorehe have opposed this settlement, and they have opposed many others. So what this vote is about for Upokorehe is a yes vote supports Upokorehe being taken out of the mandate. We also want out of the settlement. Others do not speak for Upokorehe, and the vote cannot change our identity, and this today is not about that. It is about Upokorehe coming out of the Whakatohia settlement. So the voting packs are down the back. You've heard the Elections New Zealand people are there. There was a whakapapa form for those that have to cast a special vote. Fill out as much as you can on the whakapapa form. These forms are confidential. They won't be placed on any register. They won't be placed on the Whakatohia roll or the Upokorehe roll. They're held by ENZ. And if you have any questions about that, please ask them now down the back there. So the resolution is that the Whakatohia Pre-Settlement Claims Trust mandate should be amended to exclude Upokorehe and their claims from the Whakatohia settlement for historical treaty claims. We are asking everybody to vote yes, because a yes will tell the Crown and the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust they don't represent Upokorehe. Well, we all know what's at stake here. Upokorehe have suffered some of the worst atrocities committed in this country. They were committed by the military and by the settler troops and by the Crown. We want these breaches fully documented. Upokorehe have always been adamant. We want our histories recorded at a Waitangi Tribunal historical hearing prior to the settlement of our claims. How can you reach a settlement if you haven't heard the hara? How can you reach a settlement if the people haven't talked and put that hara on the table? What you get is a deal. The hara is still there. This is not the process to do that clearly. This is a process to reach a deal. Let's call it what it is. Now, if Upokorehe is included in the settlement, the Upokorehe whakapapa is being ignored. Why is that? Because Upokorehe have their own whakapapa. They have their own primary whakapapa line to the whenua. That's theirs. Calling them anything else, relying on a secondary whakapapa line and pulling that over the top, that's not a settlement. And we'll talk on that later. So what are our whenua grievances here? Well, after the raupatu, Upokorehe were put onto reserves. The Upokorehe tribe was put on the Hiwaro reserve. The Upokorehe hapu was put on the Hokianga reserve. Those reserves were meant to be for Upokorehe, but individuals had their names in the title who were not even Upokorehe. And the Crown did that because they were trying to curry favour with other tribes, other neighbouring tribes in the hunt for Te Kooti. So once again, Upokorehe was the kai to be eaten on the table, used by the Crown for their own purposes. That wasn't the first time. That was the settling of the reserves. Now, the Wahine received lesser shares. I think they received half a share compared to the men. So much for one's whakapapa. You're getting shares based on your gender. The other thing that happened about the same time, the Crown designated the Upokorehe hapu. They put them into the Ōpapi Reserve as a hapu. Now there's a story behind that that will come out in full at the historical hearing, but our kaumātua have told us that when Wiakiaki heard about signing Te Tiriti o Waitangi, he had a hikoi around the motu to talk to Upokorehe wherever they were living, to say to them, what are we going to do? Are we going to sign this significant thing? So he gets back and he finds that some individuals within Whakatohia had sold his lands to the Church Missionary Society. And as recompense, land was given out towards Ōpapi. That was the origin of Upokorehe being there. And Wiakiaki said, he wai tarewa, we will never set foot on those lands. Those lands are not our lands. Our lands, as you know, are around Hiwaro and Hokianga and Ohiwa. So when it came to settling the Tūhoi settlement, Upokorehe were put in there against our will. When it comes to settling the Whakatohia settlement, we're back in Upokorehe hapu is sitting in the Tūhoi post-settlement governance entity deed. We didn't ask to go in there. We didn't even know the Crown was putting that forward as a process, but we got put in there. And it's happening again with the Whakatohia settlement. So Upokorehe set up their own trust to protect our rohi through this process. There's some of our trustee members and their whānau, and we acknowledge those that have passed on. And that was our whānau protesting our lands being put into the Tūhoi settlement. That was in 2013. We also protested our lands being put into the Whakatohia settlement. We're equal opportunity people when it comes to other iwi trying to take our lands. Upokorehe want Upokorehe whenua for Upokorehe. So what is our position? Upokorehe's position is Upokorehe are an iwi in our own right. We do not belong in either the Tūhoi settlement or the Whakatohia settlement. We said to Whakatohia, we want to walk alongside you. Let's find a way to work alongside you. That didn't happen. And there have been 4 attempted facilitations. Now, we believe if some of those things have happened, this last resort petition, we would not be here today. So what did we want? We wanted what we called a comprehensive and non-competing mandate strategy, and what that was Upokorehe will have the right to seek the mandate for Upokorehe to represent Upokorehe claims and Upokorehe lands, and we support the right of the Whakatohia hapu to do the same. And then we come together and talk, and we develop protocols for how we manage those boundaries, how do we manage those shared areas where there are interests. Now, the Crown didn't want to know about that, and neither did the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust, but that has been our position all the way through. That is the way we believe the settlement should have gone. So what Upokorehe was talking about is this bit in A. That's Upokorehe Tūturu. We know there are issues and areas to be talked about, but by and large, Upokorehe Tūturu. Whakatohia Tūturu, and this is shared. Not just between us, but with other iwi. So we don't just see that as a blanket over the whole of the rohi called Whakatohia. What are the problems with the settlement? Well, we've got problems with the post-settlement governance entity, with our whenua being used over the whakapapa, over the individual groups, rangatiratanga, and the historical account. So the current context is a Whakatohia Māori Trust Board, where we have 6 hapu on the board with 2 representatives each, and Upokorehe is one of those 6 hapu. We were put there by the Crown, and that's another part of the story. But there is no representation for the Upokorehe tribe. It's only the Upokorehe hapu on the trust board. There are other hapu within, and marae within Upokorehe who have no representation, except through the Upokorehe tribe. So the trust board cannot and does not represent the Upokorehe tribe. So the post-settlement governance entity, currently Upokorehe has 2 votes out of 12. We're looking at 2 votes out of 16. So that means Upokorehe can be easily outvoted on any matters concerning their own whenua. Well, what does the fine print say? It says we're required to identify primarily as Whakatohia. We have people in Upokorehe who don't identify as Whakatohia. We can't flick them away and carry on this process of only pulling out part of us to make everybody else happy. We can't do that. So we have to literally park the primary Upokorehe whakapapa to the side and identify as whakatōhia. And that's just to have a 2 out of 16th say in our whenua, in our lands. This isn't currently the case. I want to really make that clear. Yes, there are Crown lands there, but Upokorehe have been acting as kaitiaki for those lands for a very, very long time. And I'm really privileged that we've got the Upokorehe Resource Management team here who can talk to you about what they're doing on those lands. So I'm going to ask Trevor Ransfield, who you all know is the RMT, just to share with us what Upokorehe have been doing in those lands for approximately 30 years. Kia ora, Trevor. That's just the clicker. You don't need it, it's a clicker.
Kia ora tātou, ko Trevor Ransfield tōku ingoa. Kuterere marae, I'm the custodian of Kuterere marae, and our whānau that sit with the Upokorehe Treaty Settlements Claims Trust. I am their representative. I represent the Upokorehe Treaty Claims Trust on the Upokorehe iwi settlement. Very quite significant and very strong team that we have. We have over 20 odd kaitiaki that work day to day. We have kaumātua that go out on site visits regularly. We do up to about 6 site visits a month from Ohope to the Waiweka River in our boundary in our rohe. Some of the projects that we've covered over the years, in 2014 we had the stranding of 70 pilot whales that stranded in the Ohiwa Harbour. That project went on for 2 years, and they set up Roimata Marae as a laboratory for all researchers and all workers to work in that tōhora program. 2 years. The tōhunga was Ramari Stewart from Ngāi Tai Whakai, from Ngāti Awa. And that she was our tōhunga. That project was a huge project, and it involved the Baupleti Regional Council, the District Councils, Department of Conservation, and also other members from other iwis that we invited to come and have to tautoko us in that project. So that was the whale project. We have probably one of the most outstanding collections of tōhora. We have 70. They set up our Roimata Marae. It's internationally and nationally recognised. It's been on Native Affairs. It's been on Te Kārere, or the program on the whale research. It was huge. And I thank the people of Upokorehe and Roimata for hosting that for 2 years. 2 years on the marae. You close your marae off, you mahi da mahi. You have all these researchers come up from Otago University. That's huge. That's kaitiaki. That's your mahi. That's the mahi you do. The next one I want to talk about is Richard holding the kiwi. The kiwi project started off in early 2000. They started kiwi release from Ohope. Those kiwi that were releasing into the Ohope Reserve actually came from Upokorehe. They sent over 100 kiwis up into the Ohope Kiwi Reserve under the Whakatane Kiwi Trust. We said, Carl, that's enough. That's enough. We want to set up our own Kiwi Trust. So we went to Department of Conservation, and they gave us the Wātahi Reserve, 260 acres, or hectares, 260 hectares to start off our own program, our own Kiwi Reserve, and that. We have our own monitors from the Kaikatea up in the Wairotahi Valley that monitor this program. We have about 160 odd bait stations at the moment in through that reserve, and we also have about 80 kiwis in that monitoring program that's gone out of there. So that's a lot of kiwi. There's never been a Kiwi Trust or a Kiwi organisation in this rohe. So we come up with that initiative and with the Upokorehe whānau there. And that's the mahi, that they are mahi on the ground, that the whānau don't actually know what we're actually doing. The next one is the pipi monitoring, or whanau ko piko piko, at Ohiwa Harbour. The busiest time is over the holiday periods, when the school is on holiday. For 6-7 weeks, we're out there every day. Sometimes 2 tides, the morning tide and the evening tide, with our monitors and their supervisor, Galen Kohunu. She's not here today due to her operation. But they operate, they give their time, no funding whatsoever. You're down there early in the morning, you're down there late afternoon to catch the tides and the monitoring of those pipis and these the whanau ko piko piko brochures and that our monitors put out and that. So 6 weeks is a long time of your time over the holidays, where you spend your time with your mokapunas. Our people are out there. Uncle Wally's been on Native Affairs, Uncle Wally's been on Te Kārere, and he's spoken about these with those programs. The other programs that we've run, and I've just taken a few notes of them, is the Memorandum of Understanding at Onikawa Te Mawhai Pā, one of the historical sites within Ohiwa Harbour. Goes back about the time of Hape One and those times, and back into now. It's still there. We monitor Onikawa Te Mawhai. We do a yearly inspection of that reserves up there with the regional council, and then every year we're up there. We have programs up there in tracks and that, cutting tracks through the Onikawa Te Mawhai. A lot of visitors and that come through there. So at the Kaitiaki, we're up there on Onikawa, and we recognise that the tangata whenua with regional council of that position, of that parsite. The other one is the Hokatai Domain up in here. The Hokatai Domain has the waharo of Upokorehe up there in the domain up here. And that's a domain of that where Take is, where they buried the old bones of the chipuna in those early centuries, in those times. And that the history is laid up in there. It's now used for bottomless and all that, planting and all that, run by the care group of Hukataya care group under John McLeod and Kane McLeod, and they're our care group. New Zealand Transport Agencies, NZTA. All the roadworks from Wainui, from Ohope Wainui to the Waiweka, and that we have agreement with New Zealand NZTA on the roads, and that they work from Wainui to Matakarepu, and now they Matakarepu to Waiotahe, and that another big project, and they're just starting to work around the back road. So there's another road that can come into Opotiki. If the main state highway gets closed off, we use the back road. Huge mahi, a lot of meetings and that. That's one of the other programs we have. We do a lot of native planting within the rohe of Te Upokorehe. The last one we did was up in the Kaikatea Valley about 2 years ago. We planted 3,000 native plants up there in the valley on the Whenua's family property up there. 3,000 plants we planted, and that and many more places around Ohiwa and also around the Onikawa Te Mawhai Pāsai, where we invited the kohana and the kuta to come up and help us in that project. So we're out there. This is what we wear. This is our mana and our kaitiaki and our mahi we do. If you have a look on there, It tells you. It tells you. All that here tells you what we do with our mokapunas and all, looking after the taiao and all that within the kohana reo. That tells you what we do. We are the kaitiaki out there. We are the ones that are on the ground. Us, this fellow here, Wallace, Aramana, he's out there with us. We do many, many site visits within the rohe. Who's there? Us. We are the voices. And let we try and stop us from doing all that mahi. Give it to someone else that's not really there. That's why we are standing. We are standing for our own right. Okay. You take that all away from us. Who's there? Upokorehe whānau. That's one of the reasons, and that's the reason we want to withdraw from the settlement. We do our own mahi. We do our own mahi out there.
And what Trevor's talking about, if you look behind you on the screen, we've got approximately 79 sites and ancestral sites within Upokorehe that are going into the settlement. Now, all that work Trevor's doing, Upokorehe is able to do because Upokorehe are the kaitiaki. They don't have a 2 out of 16th vote to do this. They don't wait for anybody to tell them they can do it. They've been doing this for over 30 years. But now there's another entity being brought in over the top, an Upokorehe, and you've heard from our kaumātua here. That's going to be the life for them after the settlement. Kia ora, Trevor, thank you for that.
Kia ora. I just got a couple of more. Sorry, Ko, I won't hold you up. We sit on the Ohiwa Harbour Information Forum, like Whakatoia, Tūhoi. We sit on the Ohiwa Harbour Strategy Coordination Group Hui, like Whakatoia, Tūhoi. They sit there. We are there. We sit there. We are at the table all the time. We sit on the Mainakuri Mahare Ki Tihi Rose Fishery Forums. We sit on those forums and that. But do we get recognised for our own? I think we get put down instead of recognised. So I just want to talk about that. And the other project that we have in the Ohiwa Harbour is replenishing our muscle beds and that the whānau don't know out there. We've got 4 stations out there in the harbour, 2 on the western side and 2 on our side on the eastern side at Whanako Piko, and 1 down by Hokianga Island, just up from there. They were set up for mussel spat, to get our mussel spat. We got lines in there, we got 4 stations in there, spat lines in there, and those spat lines are thriving. Thousands and thousands of spat are on those lines. So the spat are there, but the problem is the sea star on the mudflats. The sea star is the problem in that. So we're working on that with researchers and that. So that's another project we're doing. So thank you for the clap. Makes me a bit happier. Recognising what we actually do. Kia ora.
Just in terms of timing, we're about 5 minutes in terms of your allotted time, so you use that how you.
So can groups benefit individually under the settlement? Well, this is the process that Upokorehe has been told will give us rangatiratanga. We don't believe it will. The Pre-Settlement Claims Trust will talk to you about that, but we've got a lot of concerns about that. We don't believe it's the way forward. We take issue with the historical account. That's supposed to stand. A lot of that research is supposed to inform the settlement. We don't think it's pretty light once over. The research was rushed. It doesn't reflect our history. And there's a Waitangi Tribunal report yet to come. So the impact of amending the mandate, well, this petition is a last resort for us. And we believe it's up to the Crown to lay out the impacts on Upokorehe of the vote going forward. What are they going to do? You've heard from Trevor. Here are the projects he was talking about. So this is how Upokorehe exercise their rangatiratanga, and you will notice it's very, very much about what we do in the rohi, what our people do in the rohi on a daily basis. That's what's important to us. That's who Upokorehe have always been, and you'll know from thinking back and reflecting on the people who have been there in the past before our current kaumātua. They were there for the rohi. And as a consequence, this tohu came to Upokorehe when we needed them most. That pod was going to beach. They beached when Upokorehe had done everything we could to push back on the big korowai of the Tūhoe settlement being pulled over the Ohiwa harbour and our lands. And what happened? When that happened, who did Doc talk to? Our kaumātua went home and they'd been waiting to see him till quite late in the evening because they knew the people who know the rohi are Upokorehe. Not Tūhoe, not Whakatohea, Upokorehe. And that's how our kaumātua saw that beaching. Because they came and they beached with us, they anchored our mauri forever with theirs at the harbour. And then we have the Taku Taimoana Act. Here's the team reviewing, preparing. What is very important is that the application put forward by Te Whakatohea iwi was unsuccessful. The successful applications were the Upokorehe application and the 5 Whakatohea hapu applications. Something that was not mana whenua, mana moana based did not have the customary evidence. They had the kōrero, but they didn't have the customary evidence to satisfy the tests. So what is our vision for the way forward? Well, this is really simple. We want the tribunal to make recommendations. And we believe our mandate proposal is the way to go here. Because it gives those that actually are of the whenua the opportunity to have that kōrero and to hold that kōrero and to be who they are within the rohi, not having to go to another entity being pulled over the top. So we want our kaumātua, our resource management team, our whānau, our hapu, to continue what they're doing and get stronger, not to take a backward step. We want to go forward, not to go backwards. And that's Uncle Wally's kōrero about the treaty settlements process. The treaty settlements process is making some of our whānau feel they have to be either Whakatohea or Tūhoe to have the say in our rohi. He says, Carl, we don't have to be other than who we are. We don't have to be other than who we are. Each of our hapu and marae have their own mauri, and it is a upokorehitanga that binds us together. Kia ora, Uncle.
So what I had suggested at the start is we try to get through our presentations, and I think that's fair so that you can hear the other two parties as well. If there is a burning matter that you feel needs to be said now, then I'd allow it. But if you can bear with us, my preference would be to now call on the Crown. Kei te pai. Whānau, kia ora. Thank you, Upokorehe petitioners. Jacob Pollock from Te Arawhiti, do you want to come forward and perhaps also introduce, I understand that Te Puni Kōkiri have got a representative here.
Mike out.
Can we have our tech team just help Jacob, please? We've been going an hour. Don't go away, but feel free to stand up and stretch your tinana just while we get that sorted. Good to meet you. just test your mic. Let's get it going. Okay, fine. Kia ora, kia ora. We can retake our seats, please. All right, Jacob, you've got the floor. Jacob, I'll get you. Oh, sorry, just checking sound. Is he okay on for the live stream? All right, thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te tuatai, aroha mai for being late. Our flight was delayed getting into Tauranga, so that's why we showed up late, and there's all this madness happening. Ko ai ko Jacob Pollock, toku ingoa, ko kai whakahaere ki Te Arawhiti. I'm the Negotiations and Settlement Manager for the Eastern Bay of Plenty treaty settlement negotiations, including the Te Whakatōhea negotiations. I'm here with my colleague Rhiannon Bertward-Gander, who's taking notes, and also our colleague from TPK, Ngawa Hall, who's observing as well. I'm here to talk about the consequences of the proposed amendment. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but I only just handed it over to the tech people and it hasn't appeared on screen yet. Here it is. Great. So I'm just here to provide information from the Crown's perspective on the effects of excluding Te Upokorehe from the Whakatōhea treaty settlement that was initialed in December last year. I'm going to cover roughly 5 areas, which is the claimant definition and definition of historical claims, the effect on the redress that was agreed in the treaty, in the initial deed of settlement, Whakatōhea post-settlement governance, and the future settlement of Te Upokorehe historical claims, and then very briefly the Takaitai Moana decision in the Edwards hearing. So a treaty settlement, a comprehensive treaty settlement of historical claims settles all of the historical claims of members of the settling group, the iwi, in this case Te Whakatōhea, that relate to Crown Acts and emissions prior to September 1992. So anything that is from, sorry, I'm feeding back a bit, should I move slightly? Anything prior to September 1992 is settled through a treaty settlement. And what settlement means is that essentially the courts are no longer able to look into these claims and they can't be pursued through other legal mechanisms. And in exchange for that, the Crown will provide redress in the form of commercials of the treaty and an apology. So the way that this gets all defined is through a claimant definition. The claimant definition is in some ways the heart of a treaty settlement. Who are the people whose claims are being settled and who will benefit from the settlement? And it works by whakapapa. So the treaty settlement will define the key tupuna from whom the settling group descends, the beneficiaries, and people who whakapapa to those tupuna will have their claims, their historical claims settled by the settlement and benefit from the settlement if it's agreed to through a ratification process. In the case of Te Whakatōhea, the key tupuna are Muriwai and or Tutamuri, and any recognised ancestor of Ngāti Rua, Ngai Tamahoa, Ngāti Patumoana, Ngāti Ngahere, Ngāti Ira, and Te Upokorehe. So what the recognised ancestor part of it means is that ancestors who are not Muriwai and Tutamuri and don't descend from them, for instance, For instance, Tairongo of Upokorehe will be sort of included in that, so all of those people are included as well. And they become people who can benefit from the settlement and be trustees, vote for trustees, etc., on the post-settlement governance entity. So, because one of the potential effects of this amendment is that Muruwai may not be able to be a defining ancestor of Te Whakatōhea. And that's because of the marriage between, well, the relationship between Ani Iwaho and Tuamutu. And Tuamutu was a descendant of Muruwai. That led to Raumoa, and that's one of the ancestors of Te Upokorehe. And so, because of that whakapapa line, it may be that if we exclude Te Upokorehe from the treaty settlement through this process, then Muruwai may have to be removed because that whakapapa line would include Te Upokorehe people. What would happen then is that we'd look for other key ancestors within Te Whakatōhea in order to define a Te Whakatōhea that doesn't include Te Upokorehe. A consequence of making that change to the claimant definition is that Upokorehe historical claims would not be included in the treaty settlement because the people are defined and then their claims are included on the basis that they fit within that definition. So if Te Upokorehe is no longer in that definition, Te Upokorehe claims will no longer be in that definition if that claimant definition is changed. That said, all of the Y claims that are registered as Te Upokorehe Y claims refer to Whakatōhea in one way or another, either as describe Te Upokorehe as a hapu of Te Whakatōhea or describe a relationship with Te Whakatōhea. So they would be included in the settlement and listed to the extent that they relate to Te Whakatōhea. And here's just a couple of examples of that. I should also clarify that, oh, that's annoying. I should clarify that it's not just registered Y claims that are being settled, it's all claims. Whether or not they're registered as claims and whether or not a person has a Y claim, your claims are still being settled because you still have the same hara with the Crown as someone who has a registered Y claim. So it's all claims get settled to the extent that they fit within the claimant definition. Unfortunately, the half of this slide has disappeared, and it was there when I looked at it last night, but for some reason it hasn't translated. But this next part is about the overlapping interest process. So if Te Upokorehe excluded from the treaty settlement through a mandate amendment, we would go through an overlapping interest process with all of the agreed redress in the Te Whakatōhea treaty settlement, initial deed of settlement. What that would mean is that Te Whakatōhea would engage with representatives of Te Upokorehe and they would discuss the redress that's in the package already. As Kahukori pointed out, there's approximately 39 sites of various kinds, so there's cultural redress sites that are proposed for transfer that are reserves, such as Kutarere Recreation Reserve, Matakiripu and Kōtare, Te Papa, Hospital Hill, Mātiti, the Maunga, and ones like that. There's also a few commercial redress items, some schools, and also natural resources co-governance arrangements, which are all listed on the slide that you can't see for some reason, but we'll sort that out for the next hui, I hope. And so we go through that process and there'll be a discussion about what's appropriate to include, what's not appropriate to include, and may end up removing sites from the Whakatōhea package. That would depend on the outcome of discussions and, if necessary, decisions by the Minister. Another aspect of it is that the Whakatōhea treaty settlement includes $100 million in commercial redress, commercial funds, and some cultural funds as well, and ministers may decide to revisit that figure if the group that is being settled becomes smaller. That's a decision that they would have to consider. I don't know what that decision would be. So the next matter is post-settlement governance. If the Whakatohea Treaty Settlement without Te Upokorehe were to be ratified, accepted and go through, a post-settlement governance entity called Te Tāwharo or Te Whakatohea would be established to receive and manage all of the redress. That currently has provision for 2 hapu trustees per hapu, including 2 hapu trustees for Te Upokorehe. So obviously if Te Upokorehe are not part of the settlement, they would not be represented on Te Tāwharo. So that would be removed. One thing that's proposed to happen through the Whakatohea Treaty Settlement is for the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board to be disestablished and for all of its assets to be transferred across to the post-settlement governance entity. And that includes the fisheries trust as well as everything that it currently manages. The reason that can happen through the treaty settlement is because the beneficiary class of the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board is exactly the same as the beneficiaries of Te Tāwharo. So you can remove and transfer those assets because they're going from the same people to the same people. If Te Upokorehe were no longer part of the governance arrangements for Te Whakatohea, as they are now, then we couldn't use the settlement legislation to disestablish the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board. And the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board would have to continue alongside Te Tāwharo. It may be some time in the future an agreement could be reached to undertake that process, but it couldn't happen now. If Te Upokorehe were excluded from the treaty settlement, the ministers would need to decide whether it was appropriate to enter into negotiations with Te Upokorehe. That's a decision that ministers would make at some point in the future. And a group would need to run a mandate process to do so. And then it would need to go through a standard mandating process where that would all be undertaken, ministers would recognise the mandate and enter in negotiations, all in accordance with Crown policy. At that time, Te Upokorehe would negotiate a treaty settlement package, and that would need to undertake a similar overlapping interest process to the one that the Whakatohea settlement was taken through. And that would include with Tūhoi, Ngāti Awa, Te Aitanga Amahaki, Te Whānau Kai, and of course Te Whakatohea. So any redress that was offered to Upokorehe in overlapped areas, and that area would be 100% overlapped, would need to be discussed. And again, there's no changes may be made to the package. Another thing that I would say is that the government of the day is making decisions about what to offer, and it may be that a future government might decide not to offer. If things were to be removed from the Whakatohea package today, that does not mean that they would be included in an Upokorehe package in the future, because it's a decision that's taken by ministers in accordance with their own thinking on things, and it's not something that we can just guarantee, because this is essentially, treaty settlements are essentially political processes. So that would be that would be where that ends up. It's something that would happen in the future and about which today we couldn't make any guarantees, but it would be a standard kind of process if ministers decided to enter those negotiations. And the final thing, just for... the current package is at a point where Whakatohea, or all of the people who are can be beneficiaries of the settlement, would vote on it through a ratification process, and if it showed enough support through a ratification process, through a vote, then we would sign the deed of settlement, and then it would become guaranteed. So at the moment, it's not, but the only question is, do Whakatohea support it? But we're going through this vote first because the petition started this process. So finally, yeah, so nothing will be removed. What's in the package now, in the treaty settlement now, is what will go through a ratification process if Te Upokorehe are not excluded. So if they are excluded, then we'd have those overlapping interest discussions with Te Upokorehe, if that's clear. So finally, Kahukori mentioned the Maka judgment, the Edwards judgment, which is currently going through appeals. Obviously, people who are claimants would have to take legal advice on this because it's a legal question for the courts, but from our perspective, it would not have an impact on that judgment because that judgment was made before this process under the evidence presented to it. So we don't think that there would be any effect there, but that's just our perspective as the Crown. It's not, it's really a matter for the courts, I guess, if it was put to them. But that's not legal advice, please do not take it as such. And thank you, Jason. I should also mention that the treaty settlement itself would have no impact on the Maka decision. There's a specific clause in there to make that clear. So that's all, from our perspective, that would be the potential effects of excluding Upokorehe from the settlement. Yes, that's me, I guess.
Can I just confirm that the slides you've got will be made available on request, so if people are wanting to...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Can I ask the Whakatohia Reclaim Settlement Trust to make their presentation? Thanks to everybody for your respect for our speakers. It's really appreciated. After this presentation, we're going to have just a 5-minute stretch and a toilet break, and then we're going to have question and answer session.
Goodbye. Kia ora koutou. Kia ora koutou ringo i ngā āhuatanga here nei tātou I tēnei ahi. Nō reira, mihi ana ki a koe, Roger, no tuku ngā karakia e wāwāhi ngā kōrero, hei koro ai aroha mō tēnei o ngā iwi o te whakatohia, e rungi ngā whakawhitinga kōrero. O tira ki a koe, te pāpā, Robert, no e whakatau ana mātou I tēnei rā. O tira koutou katoa, ngā whataunga whakatohia, ngā hapu katoa o te whakatohia, tai atu rā ki a Upokorehe, ngā marae katoa, tēnā koutou. Ko Māui Hatsa tōku ingoa, no ngai tamahaua, tērā taha o te whakatohia, mihi nei kia koutou. So I've been one of the negotiators that's been involved with the settlement process on behalf of the Whakatohia Pre-Settlement Claims Trust. And so there's, if this thing is going to work, what am I pushing? Pushing the wrong button. Point it at something.
We have some tech support just to make sure the presentation...
Oh yeah, talk louder, talk up. Okay, cool. I can do that. Okay, so while someone sorts this thing out, one of the things I'll be much happier doing here would be talking about the settlement itself. And you saw in the background that there's the deed has been initialed. All of the things that are in the settlement, we know what they are. They've all been negotiated. And the Pre-Settlement Trust and the Crown had agreed that actually it's time for that to go to the people and for you to have the say around what that is. And that's reflected in this thing that took place just before Christmas. But we do have to follow the rules that govern the rules that govern the setting up of the trust, which included if there was enough of the whānau that felt that there was a need to make some changes, then we would have these sort of hui to do that. And it will come out to the people for them to have a kōrero. And so this is what we're in at the moment. Okay, ka pai. And so one of the things I just wanted to do was actually to highlight what was actually in the petition. And these are the things that people were signing up and say, hey, we want these things to be looked at a little bit more. And what had come across was that Upokorehe, or what the claims being made was, Upokorehe aren't and have never been whakatohia. Their whakapaparing claims are distinct from whakatohia, that they haven't been represented on the Whakatohia Pre-Settlement Claims Trust and therefore haven't had a voice in the way the negotiations have come about. And they object to the whenua, their whenua being given to whakatohia. And so that leads to what was presented, being able to settle the claims themselves. And to get in that position, they have to remove it from what we have in front of us at the moment, which is that settlement. And so, you know, we really wanted to just highlight, and I know it's going to be really hard to see here because there's actually, you know, a whole lot of things that are speaking back to it, but this is the information that's in the information sheet. So the table that's represented there is actually what's sitting here. So when they say they aren't and they've never been whakatohia, we just have to look at things like the inclusion in the Opotiki Native Reserve. That wouldn't have happened unless they were in that space. And that was from 1871, and Opotiki number 4 is that block. Of course, there's the choice they made not to move across, which was, you know, as we all got forced across off our whenua in different places, had to make those sorts of decisions. But they were also included in all of the petitions which we made. So our history of trying to get redress for the raupatu, to have the raupatu fixed up, we were all there together. All the 6 hapu, fighting for that. When that resulted in the first settlement which got our farm and established the Whakatohia Māori Trust Board, kei konei te Upokorehe. Ki te taha o Ngai Tama, Ngāti Rua, Ngāti Patu, Ngāti Ngāhere, Ngāti Ira, to Upokorehe. We were all there. And then during, as was described, about where they've sat, and we know that happens when you're the one that sits alongside the neighbouring iwi and the claims, and particularly because we know the Ohiwa Harbour, he tino taonga, the Ohiwa Harbour, for kai, for all sorts of things. And so all of the iwi around that area, they look at it, they want things from it, and so that's been a part of that history. And so part of that, when the Tūhoe settlement was saying how our relationships with our whanaunga and Upokorehe give us a right to include them in there. But they stood up and said, no, we're not in there because we're a hapu o whakatohia. And that was 10 years ago. And so these things are sitting there. And at the moment on the Whakatohia Māori Trust Board register, there's over 1,700 whānau from Upokorehe that are registered and sitting in that place. And so, you know, I've always known it to be a part of whakatohia. And that's not saying that it's, you come, you know, drive down from the coast and you hit the Ohiwa Harbour and you go, oh yeah, I'm in whakatohia. I'm not in there and saying that's only whakatohia. Like it's all of a sudden whakatohia. I drive up the valley to Gisborne. I know I'm going into Ngāti Ira, but in the rohe o te whakatohia. When I'm over the Ohiwa Harbour, hey, Upokorehe, in the rohe o te whakatohia. So our hapu are a part of the iwi, and it all sits there, and that recognition of their responsibilities as kaitiaki for those places is supported by the other hapu, is supported by the iwi. And when we look at the whakapapa, and I think, you know, Jacob has already described what it means in terms of the Crown thinking about it, but actually if you look at it, you see that we're all descending from those, all descendants from Muriwai. And that's why Muriwai was chosen as that tūpuna that would be the one for whakatohia, because it was her line that connected, was the here for all of us that we're going to sit together as the iwi. Not as a large natural grouping, as an iwi. So, you know, those things sit there. The Waitangi Tribunal have already looked at this when they did the first mandate inquiry, and they said it was not unreasonable. And if you put the double negatives together, it means it's reasonable that Upokorehe be included in the whakatohia settlement. And so that's what they've already said. And as Jacob pointed out, all of the claims that relate to Upokorehe relate to whakatohia. Talk about Upokorehe as a part of whakatohia or some relationship with whakatohia as well. In terms of the involvement of Upokorehe on the Whakatohia Pre-Settlement Claims Trust, kei konei a Bruce Poke, the delegate from Kutarere Marae, kei konei a Keita Hudson, delegate from Marumohoi, been there since the beginning. Muriwai Kahaki was there as the rep for Upokorehe. So the way that was set up allowed for representatives from each of the hapu and each of the marae, which meant Upokorehe had the potential for 4 representatives when the other hapu only had 2. But Roimata has chosen right since the beginning, as was their right, to not put up a delegate. So Upokorehe only had 3 on there. But they've been there right through the kōrero, as the package was put together, as we were involved in overlapping claims discussions with Ngāti Awa and Tūhoi. Kei konei katoa. Rātou, me tahi atu o ngā kaumātua. So this is what makes it a little bit hard to accept it from the claim point of view. We know that people often want to do their own thing, and there's some of the whānau that think that it's better if they do their own thing. But one of the issues that we've had all along is that kōrero, they should have taken and had it with Upokorehe. And Upokorehe should have had the kōrero about, is this the way they want to go? And that hasn't happened, and it's been pushed out to everyone else before that was sorted. And that was the kōrero that we've had from our Upokorehe reps saying, waiho mā mātou. We'll sort it, it's for us to sort out ourselves amongst ourselves, not for the iwi. But, this is, those things were the, I guess, our response to the claims that were made, or the claims being made, which was the basis for the petition. But what we've seen through the kōrero is that actually doing something like this is starting to have an effect on how we think about our identity and our whakapapa, and what it means for our relationships with whenua, and those things in tikanga. And that's the challenging part about it, because that really shouldn't be a kōrero for here. This should be a kōrero which we have on a marae, and sort this stuff out before coming into these sorts of forum. And it's clear from the whakapapa, and this is the one that sits in the Māori Trust Board, the Whakatohe Māori Trust Board. Been there since the 50s, always had Upokorehe representatives on it, had people from Upokorehe that have chaired the Trust Board. And this is the whakapapa that was actually got Tiriaki and Matinga Biddle, have had that in place. And you see the relationship over there with Repanga, and how they create a close connection with Upokorehe and Ngāti Rua.
Sorry, just on that slide, this is a really important question, sorry. Was that whakapapa verified by Charlie Aramwana?
So was it verified by Charlie Aramwana? Oh, Keita, probably better to answer that.
Actually, I was the one that actually put the whakapapa together. And I held on to it until it was verified by our Opotiki. Tiriaki and Ramindri were the last ones to verify it. And I heard that.
So, we don't have to talk about this part, because this is, this is what Jacob has said, that if we try to artificially remove bits of our whakapapa, it starts to create all of these sorts of issues we have to then try and deal with. And, I think there's a lot of people that feel like we shouldn't be doing that. And that is then not working in a tikanga way, it's trying to work through some other sorts of processes. So I think that's the problem with not being able to have a whakapapa kōrero in the right sort of place, And then it has this effect on the whenua as well. Because we talk about our rohe, and this was the rohe that was provided by kaumātua Hoiro Horokai and Heremiru Hoira. Understanding Hoiro Horokai was no Upokorehe hoki, and this is the evidence which they gave about what the rohe of the whakatohia was. From Te Rangi, at the other side of Wōpape, the Marae Tōtara, and all around the back. So that's what we've used as we've been doing our negotiations. We haven't extended beyond that to talk about interest outside of that space. And that's where all of the redress that's coming back to us in the settlement sit within that space. And you'll see here on this side the maps which have been shown by both the petitioners but also the Crown around what they're claiming the Upokorehe Tūturu whenua is, from the Waiaweka River west. Hit the New World, cross the bridge, golf course, whenua Tūturu, from there across. And so while we see the pictures of Ohiwa and, Mōhea katoa, for Upokorehe, there's Ngāti Patu Marae, Ngāti Patu interest, Ngaitama interest, Ngāti Ira, all of those things which were in that whenua. And so I think the claim here is a stretch to push into those, to push in this sort of way. And I think this is something that a number of Upokorehe whānau feel uncomfortable about, as uncomfortable as some of the other hapu members. And can see from some of the wāhi tapu that have been collected, Danny's been doing a lot of that kōrero with the kaumātua about where some of those sites that across that rohe as well. So, this kind of rolls into the process of how this has all come about. And it's one where we're using law to do it. And, except we're in this process, we're in the process of engaging with the Crown. We have to do the mandate, jump through the hoops in this sort of way. But we want to try and do those in a way that's consistent with what we think is the right way to act and what we think is the right way of people being represented. And so using the kind of legal processes to bolster and kind of reinforce the narrative that's been created is what's been happening through these different places. And so even when you get to the results of some of those actions like the Maka, and they talked about the Takutai Moana, what the High Court said is that even at Ohiwa, that's a shared interest of all the 6 hapu of whakatohia. They talked about, we couldn't carve it up and say, anei ngai tama, anei ngā tirua. It was mō te katoa, mā te katoa. And so in being together, we can do that. And, I think we've sort of kind of mentioned the process that the Upokorehe reps on the trust felt should have happened with an internal conversation, and that didn't happen. And so the support which we've had into the negotiations process from marae and from whānau within Upokorehe still sits there and is at odds with the views of the petitioners, which is just it's one of those things. It's not a bad thing or a good thing, because we know that sits across all the hapu in terms of this process with negotiation. But there is points where you have to say, what is the view? How do we get through? And for the settlement process, we think it's being able to put the choice out to all of our people. We've had the bit where the trust have had their say, the claimants have had their say. it's time for everyone to have their say, and that's the ratification. And so that's the bit which we need to get to. Yeah, we're just about done. So I think, there's other things that have probably been covered a bit. These are the sort of implications which, a lot of which Jacob has talked about too, but we're reiterating. We don't know, if we stick together, recognise that we're an iwi, and as the iwi we move forward together, then we will go into ratification and we'll be finished at the end of this year. That will be the next vote, and then we'll be into the signing the deed. If we don't, there's all of those other negotiations that Jacob talked about, and so we don't know what that means in terms of how much longer that will take. As I said, it's not just the removal of claims, it's changing the way we think about ourselves. And it's clear that in the way that the Crown has to say, oh, your claim, half of it gets settled here and half of it gets settled there, that there's some sort of, that we're trying to do something to it that's not natural. That's not how that it's been described. The post-settlement governance entity been set up in a way that the hapu have all got representation on there, and that was brought up. Removing Upokorehe from that, I know, just for me, doesn't feel like whakatohia in the same way. And thinking about what that looks like is, it's kind of strange. And then to result with having both the trust board operating and a post-settlement entity that are both speaking for whakatohia is one of those things that then creates other sorts of politics, things which, really, really aren't necessary. And so one of the things you'll see in the information sheet which we put around is some quotes from some of the Upokorehe whānau that they've put up. I'm privileged to have my whakapapa shared through our whakatohia whānau. I've been taught by my kuia Winnie Biddle and Karaua Hone Te Whare o Kolia that we are proud Upokorehe hapu o te whakatohia iwi. There's these different sorts of statements which they've wanted to make, and we've also wanted to try and give space for, so that the rest of whakatohia could hear, actually, anei ngā whakaro o te Upokorehe. Kei konei te tei whakaro, petitioners presented their view, but anei e tahi atu whakaro no te Upokorehe. And that should be informing the way you think about this as well. So really what we're, the sorts of things which the trust is saying is, kotahitanga. Kotahitanga isn't a tāmi, it's not a subsuming of a hapu. It's a recognition of us that we're all there as a part of the iwi. And we have the shared whakapapa and shared relationship with the whenua. And rangatiratanga is really about how you bring people together. Rā ranga ngā tira. How do you bring the hapu together? And that's what we should be expecting from the people that are taking us into the future. That they are bringing us together for all of us. And that's why, the trust is strongly saying to our whānau, just say no to the resolution. We don't want to see Upokorehe excluded or removed from the settlement. So, kia ora.
Again, we're going to move into a question and answer session. I see it's 12:38 and we've been sitting quietly since 11. So I'm going to call us back at 1:45, so that's in about 6 minutes. Please be on time. We start again at 12:45.
things. I'm a linguist, so I can read the Hebrew, the Old Testament, so I'm connecting with the and I was so surprised. I was working amongst Arabs and Muslims and that. And when I got back, my dad comes back to real life. Upokorehe was so easy. You don't have to go through English to understand it. You go direct, it makes it so that actually that's what it is. Very accurate. More accurate than English. How many translations do you need to understand? So anyway, I was saying in Norway, the sociologists came up with a definition for what is a Western identity. And that's white, educated, industrious, rich, and democratic. You listen to the letters, W-E-I-R-D. It's weird. And they said it's a weird culture in the whole world. Interesting, eh? So I've come up with one for Maori, but you don't have to accept it. But moderate, adjustable, adaptable, organic, resourceful, and intimate. That gives them money back. It restores money. But it's matching each of those 5 things. So when you go into the education system, they know it's about education. So no, it's about adaptability to what's going on. Everyone, we don't need all that stuff. I'm very confused about it. Like I'm whakatani watching and I thought this is exciting. Because it's objective, the outcome is just focused on that outcome. So it abstracts everything out of its context and then narrows it down to this is what we're going to take. So it's exploitation by its basis. Whereas Polynesia, let's go forward, the way in most indigenous cultures, it's about connecting. So that's why it's so brutal. It's so, and you can see why the two beliefs go like so they adapt because they need to. But we lost so much. All we now is looking at the future which we don't know. And we're making a heck of a mess. And we've lost the respect for the OT, you know. The OT? Yeah, we haven't got it.
Kia ora.
Got him now?
1, 2, 3.
So this is
Thank you again for your respectful attendance. How we're going to run this part of the session is we've got representatives from the various parties to answer your questions. As I said at the start, it would help us hugely, please, if when you stand, you say your name and, if you wish to, your hapu that you primarily affiliate to, and identify who you want to answer your question. That's all that's required of you. The other aspect, please, so that the microphones can pick you up, do speak with a loud voice. For those who are answering the question, if you feel that there's a sound issue, if you can just acknowledge the question in your answer so that we can make that really clear for those who are listening online. Kei te pai? All right. So the floor's open.
Tatai, kati Upokorehe, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, ki te ohia a te rua, tēnā koutou kotai, katoa, ino to te pukapuka nei. Tā koutou nā take, tā koutou nā tingana, tā koutou nā kōrero katoa. He hai, ka hōwai a papa te rua, he pōti mo te Upokorehe. Kia hau nei wai o mā koutou. Kare no te rā, rā kuti tupi whai, tō koutou kaupapa. Kurere koe kabi ati kia koutou, kai te Upokorehe. Ka rua hea hai, ka tū te hui i kōnei. E toru nā marae, kai roto i a koutou. Ko paru wā hoe, kutarere, koroi bata. Anei a tātou, kore hia, o koutou kaupapa, i rumu tere a tātou whai. Tōrina, koe kabi, kabi ati kia koe kia teo te taku rauna Bruce. Korina, koe te mi ati kia koutou. Tuarua, te pātai. Jacob, in your brief, you said that if Upokorehe pulls out, that means we're going to take away Muriwai and Tutamore as our tipuna. My question is, who gives Tarapiti the right to do that, to say that here at the Whakatore. For me, it's not up to you people to say those sort of things. It's up to us. Because I'm going to tell you now, you already know there are other hapu that are ready to pull out. Tātina 5558 is one of them. So it ain't going to be Upokorehe by itself, there are a few others. I think Maui knows the other ones, but we've been knocking at their door all the time, but we can give you pushback. So that's my question to you.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Can you stand up, please?
Sure. So, in principle, I agree with you that it's not the Crown's place to define any iwi, or to define Te Whakatōhea. It's not our place to have those that kōrero about the whakapapa. What it is our place to do is to, for the purposes of these treaty settlements that iwi Māori engage in with the Crown, is to talk about who it is that we are settling the claims of, and that's where the claimant definitions come from. And I would also agree with you that it's not something that we would want to do, to change the tupuna of Te Whakatōhea for the purposes of the claimant definition. However, we have been asked to provide information about what the consequences of this proposed change would be, and this is one of them. So that's all. That is the. That's what I have to say on that. It's not the Crown's preference. It's not the Crown's place, but it is a consequence of doing this. Is this effect on the claimant definition for Te Whakatōhea, which would carry over into the settlement legislation and the post-settlement governance entity. I think the other part of it, Matua, is that this will only go ahead if Te Whakatōhea accept it through a ratification process. So if this amendment were to be made and these discussions on overlapping interests were to take place, and eventually we get to a place where we initial a new deed or reinitial the deed we have, then it would be put to the people of Te Whakatōhea, excluding Te Upokorehe, to vote on it. And they may say no, and that is for Te Whakatōhea, or they may say yes and want to move forward with it. So it's not something the Crown is actively doing or pushing, but it is a consequence that it's my duty to present to Te Whakatōhea.
So where you at, Jacob? Sorry to interrupt. Just with respect to the same question.
Can you give your name?
With respect to the same question that our minister has just asked you, the claimant definition was decided by who, and were all hapu consulted about that claimant definition.
Can you just pause? I need to make sure everyone can hear this. Are you picking that question up from the floor?
No.
No. You are on YouTube? So you can just ask that again with a louder voice.
With respect to Papa Te Rua's Pātai, we decided the claimant definition and were each hapu consulted and in agreement to the whakapapa that was used in that claimant definition.
The claimant definition was agreed between the Whakatōhea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust and the Crown, and the Whakatōhea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust had representatives from all of the hapu, all of the 6 hapu of the Whakatōhea that are listed in the claimant definition. And I can't speak to the processes that were used by the Whakatōhea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust to reach that decision. That might be something that Maui can talk to. I also understand that that senior Whakatōhea kaumātua were a part of it as well, but that senior Whakatōhea kaumātua were part of deciding the claimant definition as well. But again, that's a question.
Can you pass that then, Maui? Do you want to just answer briefly?
Sure. Okay. So kia ora. So just to add, they talked about the process of establishing the mandate, and the process of establishing the mandate had to decide what the claimant definition was. And so that was a process that took a number of iterations. That was what Tuake Whakatōhea did. They engaged with all of the hapu around that. And then when the iwi voted on it, that's when it was set, and it's been adopted and used by the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust and the Crown through the negotiations.
Kia ora, just to go back to Matua's question, he had one for Upokorehe about the location of the hui, and you may or may not wish to respond, but I just didn't want to go over that in case you wanted to respond. He raised a question about why the hui is being held here and not on the marae.
Well, kia ora koutou, ko Maud Edwards tōku ingoa. I represent and support the Upokorehe petitioners. So the reasoning that the hui was held here was because we felt all our people had the right to participate in the hui, and the hui is about giving information for whānau to make choices. We felt it was better to have a neutral venue so that no other marae would feel that they were left out. That's why we chose a neutral venue. So kia ora.
Any other pātai?
Did you want
Matua?
to...
Kia ora tātou, kopi ingoa, o au ingoa na tei Kutarere Marae. So for those of you that know me, I'm Victor, I'm from Kutarere. I've been the trustee chair for quite a number of years. I think, you know, for me, before I get into my pātai, was about our whare here. So the Crown has already said, you know, if you vote yes, Upokorehe is going to be removed from the settlement. So when you move Upokorehe, they cease to exist. So this whare here is about remembering our soldiers that went to war. They were, their deeds founded the RSA in New Zealand. So I think it was quite pertinent that we came here. Because if you vote yes, what your growers, queers, your tifuna told you about whakatohea is rubbish. It's wrong. Because TUTCT has said that. So by voting yes, your tipunas went to war for nothing. So I'm not necessarily, worried about the settlement, but that's going to settle itself. What I'm more worried about is the history of Opotiki. That's what a vote of yes means. We no longer exist. We go find another name. Hey, we go find another name. It's not they do, we do. So that's what this is about. This is my second time that I've been attacked about my whakapapa. The first time was at Kutarere Marae. When Tūhoi settled, I was part of the settlement. So when I kept on raising our voice of Naiduranga at Kutarere, at a trustee hui, I was told, you fellas don't belong here anyway. And that was from Trevor. So the hapea whānau don't belong to Kutarere. But yet, we live up on Hiwara. We got land up there under our names. Hiwara B3A. Yet we don't exist. And now my family's mana has been attacked again because we've been told who you are and who you're not. So I've lived and breathed that at Kutarere. I've understood that at Kutarere. Now Trevor said he was from Kutarere Marae and he's part of TUTCP. Because the name Upokorehe sits at those three maraes and they sit in other places. So my question might be to Trevor, does Kutarere exist at, does Upokorehe exist at Kutarere?
Are there. They come off Upokorehe. That's my Taina's children. And that I had 253 whānau from from Kutarere Marae when we first started our hikoi. in the very first vote of this treaty settlement, voted for Te Upokorehe. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Can I add a bit to that? Oh, kia ora. I'd like to also add to Trevor's response, is that when you speak Upokorehe hapu, because that's what the claim is representing, is Upokorehe hapu. Who is that? No. Who is Upokorehe hapu? Upokorehe hapu. Can I respond, please? Can I respond?
You're going to get a chance.
Can I respond? Upokorehe hapu is Roimata Marae. And so what my point is Roimata Marae is not represented on the Whakatohea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust. So I just need to clarify that. There are people representing Upokorehe hapu without consulting with Roimata Marae, without having hui at Roimata Marae, and I can't understand how far this claim has got without the voice of Upokorehe hapu. Kia ora.
So, just taiho, there's going to be a bit of this, and it's all, we're flexible. Can we just make sure that the answer is heard? You had made your point, agree with it, but then it just went too far, so then I'm going to have to give you a chance to respond by all means. But while somebody's talking, give them the chance to answer, okay? You had your hand up just before you go there, though. The woman who was calling out, no, it's your chance to have a call. Can you give your name, please?
TUC does not speak for us. We speak for ourselves. We've never ever been heard because they've never listened to us either. So now it's time for our hapu to stand up and speak. Our whakapapa starts at Roimata. We're Upokorehe tūturu. None of you have listened to us. But how are you?
Kia ora koutou. Ko te Eme Aramona Hills tōku ingoa. Just in response, just firstly, we're here in response to the process that the Crown has laid out, and we're following that process. Secondly, to the Whakatohea whānau, we are here interfacing with the Whakatohea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust, not Whakatohea individuals. I'd just like to mention that. And then the last thing is the actual reason why we're here, and 18 petitioners, is the reason why we're here. So when you say we haven't let people have a say, or we haven't listened, that's hard to, we're here. What's triggered this whole process with the Crown is the petition that was signed by 718 Upokorehe whānau. So we're not here, we're not here as an organisation with our own mandate as individuals. We're here because the direction has brought us to this point. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Hold on. So you don't need to do that because it's a really good mic.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to leave it here and it's going to capture everybody. Okay. I'll come to you. No, hold on. We've just got a question here.
Okay.
Kāwai rangatira mai Upokorehe, kai kurere. Me wera atu rangatira o te Upokorehe, whakatohe. Koe no, kia tīmaka hawi, kia tīmaka tanga o tētai o hikoe. The first thing that's gone wrong is that our farmer never came to speak to us. Te hapu, tina hapu. We were always the hapu, Upokorehe hapu. We used to have we all the time, every month. Next minute it was Upokorehe iwi. Heka mā, ka tūmeke hoki mātai, I tēnā mahi. So what I'm saying is tikanga never happened right from the word go, and it has gone backwards. This should have been the first week, not the last week. Koe nā mai. That's why we're so angry.
So, Maud, do you want to respond to that?
Kia ora, I'd just like to pick up on Jimmy's point that we're here for the petitioners to represent their voice from Upokorehe, which I'll remind everybody or let them all know that from Kutarere Marae there were 220 petitioners. That was the voice from Kutarere Marae. From Maromahue, 150 petitioners. From Rongopapoia, 90 petitioners. From Tūranga Pikitoi, 30 petitioners. From Roimata Marae, Upokorehe Hapu, 220 petitioners. Now, what I'd like to respond to Keita is, Upokorehe Hapu has never left or never moved. They're situated at Roimata Marae. When you want to voice your Upokorehe Hapu voice, you go to the marae. Koina, do you come to the marae? Come. Advertise tuis, you don't come. We cannot make decisions for individuals who choose not to be informed. Kia ora.
I tell you what, there was a request from Maui to speak. We'll come back to you.
Kia ora whānau. So this has been one of the things that's been, I think, a sort of a distinction that's being made, which not everyone grasps. And so the general understanding of the whakatoi is that Upokorehe has the three marae. And those are, certain things, and that is the Upokorehe hapu. But through this process, it's become clear that there's a distinction which Maud is making, where they think it's only Roimata. And Roimata is the only one that thinks. And that's a discussion that's being propagated through this process, but also in the kind of the trust board sort of arena as well. So, I think, and this is where when the pre-settlement trust were having conversations, and the things around Upokorehe were bubbling, is that Keita and Bruce and the ones that were the representatives said, actually that's why the kōrero was for them to have the kōrero, because of exactly this reason. And that was the reason it should have been the first kōrero to sort that out. This isn't a petitioner's kōrero. We're acting on behalf of the petitioners. There's a difference around where the mana sits in relation to Upokorehe to be able to have a voice in how that sits. And so that is what's then being pushed through this process and then brought in front of everyone else, which is makes it awkward to understand the emotion that sits in there, and it makes it hard when we're thinking about the petitioner's view isn't supported by all of them, and yet it's been asked of us as the rest of whakatoia to have a say about it. And if I sort of respond to what Papa Te Rua said, and I've heard it from other places, this is a kōrero for them. And that's true, except it's in relation to our settlement because it's been run through this process. So it affects all of us. And that process is one which, has these effects, which isn't just the Crown process, it's not just that, it's actually about changing the way we think about ourselves into the future. And that's that whakapapa and the things that Victor are talking about with we change who we are through something like this. And we're not ready for that. It's clear that there's not enough conversation that's happened and that this shouldn't be happening like this. But, the space for the kōrero is here, and
So, just a couple of things. Yep, I'm going to come to you. A couple of things. You just let Maui get right through his statement without interruption, so you're going to do that the same for Upokorehe when they speak. I think there's a real issue, obviously, about where it should have been a better process and the rest of it. And just in my experience, that is definitely an issue that will be bubbling for you. I would also encourage, this is a short time available really, to also be focusing your questions on the here and now, like you're here, and what does it mean for you as a people. So I'm not trying to cut you off, but questions about why we didn't go somewhere else are relevant, you've asked them. I would encourage you also to use the time to focus on what's being proposed and what the effects on you are as a people. You wanted a comment, but I really do want to make sure that there's time for questions.
Just quickly responding. I'd just like to respond to Mawi's comment about, I guess, trying to define who Upokorehe is. We're very clear that they are representing Upokorehe hapu in the settlement, not Upokorehe iwi. So when you speak Upokorehe iwi, that's for us to define who we are, not for the settlement, Whakatohea Settlement Trust or the Crown. Whakapapa is not for you to define either, Maui. Yeah, you can look like that, but what I'm telling you is, again, you're speaking without the peoples who whakapapa. You're speaking in the absence of Upokorehe hapu. So we've gotten this far, and Lord knows how we've gotten to where we are without Upokorehe hapu, and I'll emphasise hapu at the table. And I don't know who's representing our marae and our hapu, because nobody's been to see us. Nobody's been to our marae.
Okay,
no one's spoken. So, koina te whakaaro.
There's just been a couple of, what happens in a room when you start mentioning names, you know, you mentioned Trevor and you're mentioning Maui, just if we keep the names out of it, if you can, it just allows us to have the kōrero on the issues, okay? Hands up if you have a pātai. I'll just look around, there's two who have already asked a pātai, so I'll come back to you. Matu at the front. Can you stand over here? Just say your name loudly and then ask your pātai.
My name is Wairata Te Onioni. I represent the tangata whenua, Pāko Wai number 2008. I was on the same road as everyone else. And the movement is committed too. Yeah, we're the Pyramid tribe. Before Opotiki was even invented. So all these tribes here now are under the umbrella of Te Tangata Whenua, Pāko Whai, because that's the challenge to the government and to Whakatohea Trust Board. On the grounds, they have no history or whakapapa to the whenua. I am the title holder to the whenua. I come from the ancient tribe of Hapuoni, East Cape. So this challenge is not only to Whakatohea and the government, it's to all other tribes. It can only be one mantle, and it belongs to Tangata Whenua. So that's the challenge to the government. If there are any objections to that now, say it now.
Have you got a pātai, Matu?
Stand up, can't hear you.
We're all kaitiaki
Of course you are. It's my meeting.
Have you got a pātai you want to ask?
So, if there's no objection, so be it.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe. Thank you for doing that respectfully too. Tēnā koe. Kia ora. Just while I'm standing, there was a pātai that was asked at the start, and then the gentleman decided to leave, so I'll just ask it so that it's on the record, that these are tūhoi lands and this shouldn't be debated at all. I don't know who's the best who wants to respond to that, but perhaps you can decide amongst yourselves who wants to just note that for the record or come back to that gentleman in due course if you wish. Maui? All right. I'm just giving the opportunity so that the hui knows that question was asked. Haere tonu. Pātau. So we had two that hands got. Matua, third row, kia ora. Again, please give your name for the record.
Victor Hape. I think I want to be on the touch on that one you talked about with Tūrana Toi. Yep, Tūrana Toi belongs in their family over there, and they are Wahapu o Tūhoi. That's my understanding of, but again, I could be corrected exactly to be.
This is question time too, not long statement.
Yep, so why 894, why 1092? My name is Charles Haramwana. I'm a co-master of Upokorehe, Kahaku o Whakatohea with close whakapapa.
It's not a question.
What I want to know is exact correct.
How dare you?
Sorry, it's in the piece of paper.
Not including us. We're talking about your being parking Nico.
So my question is,
We are here,
Kahaku o Whakatohea with close whakapapa links with Tūhoi. Yes or no?
Who's the question directed to?
Any of our TUPCP.
Ko. Te whenga nā huma hea te kāwanatanga i te wai muru hea. Ka hoki ngā iwi o tau Upokorehe ki roto e tau ta. Hala koe kāre mātou e whakapā ki kona. Kare koe mōheo taku whakapā. Tua roa, i ha hoki mai i oku nei iwi. E te puna, nō riwa pāna. Ko ai koe. Ko ai koe ki te kōrero mai pērā kia mātou. A ta tiro heo tō muri. I mua tō kōrero mai kia. Ko ai koe.
That's been answered. Okay. And you've got your hand up. Just fire. Can I'll move the mic so you don't have to shift.
Kia ora tātou, whānau, and whānau. I feel I have to stand up. Ko Muriel Kaliaho, yes, Ngāti Patu Moana, but I affiliate, as I do my children, to all the hapu of Whakatohea. First of all, I just want to touch on the topic of muriwai, and I'm going to use this word because it's what we had to use when we processed around how we had to dance to the tune of the crown. And we had to provide an eponymous ancestor that could stand the test of time and the coverage of our whole rohe. Now there was a lot of hui about that. The one I remembered the most was that Waiora. Capacity hall. And without a doubt, it was muriwai. Now, I want you all to think about the ramifications and the negatives and the heartaches that will ensue if we do not think carefully about the changes in everyday life for us and for our children going to school. How do we come to terms with any changes if it should come to pass? I am not in favour of a split out. To me, we are all one. That's how I've understood it from my birth. And that is what I will work for and towards. But having said that, we need to be more mindful in our considerations to each other. But I lay a lot of this, Jacob, as you're the face of Te Arawhiti, and the Crown, and their deliberations with their non-Māori lenses, trying to think they understand us, and they tick boxes, and they're pretty good sometimes, but you haven't got the depth of understanding. Sorry, Jacob. And that ensues in a lot of heartache, further deliberations upon deliberations. We go to the tribunal. How many times have we been to the tribunal? How many times have we had to do this and that? And you know what it does? You're causing the mortgaging of our future when we should be settled
and getting on with it, even though we do very well in some, it depends how you look at it. But we are. I'm proud of Whakatoia, but all that come within the rohe of Whakatoia. I can't exclude anybody. I can't. And a simple thing, like in everyday life. Sorry, Yeru, because it was you I was talking to, but to me you had a valid point. He's a teacher of long standing, a man of quality and ethic. How's he going to teach his kids? Which history is he going to tell the kids? We're struggling as it is to get history into our schools nationwide. We need mainstream to understand the ways of us, because we could be the saving of this planet and this country in climate change, because you don't listen. Don't be afraid of us. Work with us. We might have our issues, but we've got to learn to talk them through. But I can't exclude. I can't exclude.
Thank you for making that point. So just checking in, we've got a question that you've been wanting to ask. Can I just get a show of hands if that's a burning question, because I don't want to leave those cooks hanging either, and we've got to just have a wind up. So we'll just have this question here, and we're starting to wind up, just so you know. And then you, Mato.
Kia ora, my kata is for Mr. Pollard from the Crown. Would you recall the letter that you sent us recently, dated the 21st of July? When I say us, my apologies, I mean Ngāti, with respect to the voting, the amendment to the supplementary of this process. I just wanted to check that with you, because our people have a response to you as a representative of the Crown. Ngāti will be giving our full support to Te Upokorehe in the assertion of tino rangatiratanga e mana motuhake. In accordance with our tikana and our tino rangatiratanga, we ask that you respect the tino rangatiratanga of all hapu that seek to withdraw from this fraud and corrupt process. We will table this request that each of these hui as a declaration to all who are present that Ngāti is encouraging people to vote yes to amend the Precedent Claims Trust mandate and withdraw Te Upokorehe and the Whakatohea settlement. We remind our people and the Crown that hapu rangatiratanga is the guiding principle of Te Tiriti, and Upokorehe wants to withdraw in the same way that our hapu want to withdraw. The Crown needs to heed the mana reo on these issues. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Tēnei te tū, te whakamārama tū, anei rā. Te tū nā taku i rā mutu, i koe e tū i koa kenei. A vekta. I te wā kare kaua hau i runa i te marae o kutarere. Kai ai a te rā kau kōrere o kutarere. Ko i rā te wāhanga awa, āku me taku taina, te rā waho. Nā rā, ka riro e rā huatana, oku nā huatana i runa i te marae, a riro taku i rā mutu. Ko e nei taku tū te tau toko, i taku i rā mutu, i a Victor. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora tātou. I'm Robert Edwards. Ngāti rua o te whakatohea. Me hoki mai ki te kaupapa o te rā. Me hoki mai ki te kaupapa o te rā. Te kaupapa o te rā. E mea atu ana kia tātou katoa. That we vote yes. That they withdraw. Waina te kaupapa o te rā. Ana, te ahau. Kare au e whakaiti te. Kare au e whakaiti tēnā resolution. I'd like us to retain the status quo. Kia mautonu ki tō tātou whakapapa. Kia mautonu ki ngā hatu e ono o te whakatohea. Te taua hene ana ia tātai. Ina whakatotahi a tātai. So, yeah, Elena, to me, the result of this vote is very, very important. In fact, it is just as important as the deed of settlement, because the result of this vote will define who I am, will define who I am and where I come from. Not only that, where I'm going and who I'm going forward with. Kia ora.
Kia ora everybody, thank you for seeing this part of it through. This is just one of 6 hui. We've reached 1:30. What I'm going to do now is invite in a reverse order just a closing kōrero, perhaps 1 to 2 minutes if there are any other matters that you wish to stay. Maui, heading to you. Jacob, if you need to say anything, you're welcome to. And we leave the last kōrero with Upokorehe. So if I can pass, you've had your say. Maui, if you can kick us off to close off, please.
Yeah, kia ora whānau. So, haere kore tū atu i ngā koroa Bruce Rawa ko Robert, just reiterating, the importance of kōtaiatanga and the importance of rangatirutanga and what sort of leadership we want to take us into the future. And I think, our history shows us as being together. Our present is with us being together, and our future should be with us being together too. So kia ora whānau.
Jacob, you're right. Upokorehe, just a couple of minutes to close up, please.
I can, yep. I guess what I'd like to reiterate is that we are here to represent the voices of the 700 plus petitioners of Upokorehe. We're here because they want to retain their whakapapa, their unique whakapapa, and we're also here to tautoko those hapu that are caught in a settlement that they want to get out of, to help them also retain their tino rangatiratanga and the mana within their rohe, within the rohe of their individual hapu. Tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koutou. Did you want to say something? We just got a minute. Matua?
It's short.
Yep.
Trevor Redfield, Kuterere Marae. Just a couple of things that I want to make sure it's noted is our huia iwi over the years on this hikoi of ours, and I have them here being advertised in the Opotiki News. Upokorehe huia iwi, November 2015, Kuterere Marae, and it has the agenda. Upokorehe huia iwi, Saturday the 9th, 2017, Maramohui, Marae. Upokorehe huia iwi, the 28th of June, 2014, Roimata Marae, with all the maraes attached to it. So there's no skullduggery. All these huis are being advertised. It was the individuals that didn't want to come to listen to us. That's what happened.
Right.
They didn't want to listen to us. They didn't want to come to these hui.
Mr. Ransfield, that's
and
it. You've made the point, and I think that's really...
Oh, one more.
No.
Right, no
more. And I think it's fair too... no, sorry, if I'm going to be fair to everybody... You challenged me in the cup of tea. We're going to have a closing karakia. I'm welcome to answer any questions, but I'm not the focus. The focus is on running a fair hui. All right? Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa, e whakarongo mai ana ki tēnei kaupapa. Aha koa nā piki nā heke, ko te tūmanako, kua paita haere o tēnei o koutou whānau, hapu iwi. Can I give you the rākau to close us off and to bless our kai? And thank you for allowing me to be part of this process, and feel free to come up and talk to me later. Tēnā koutou.
i te rea tātou hui. Kona piki nā heke, e koe tūki wana, hali ara tātou. Ka tō mai nā koe, tūki kātou taimu i a tātou, koe rei, tātou, ia kia koe, tēnā, pērā kai kōreo, pērā kai kōreo, nā mea te kia rātou, kia tātou, e rea kia au kasi tō tātou. Kia tātou katoa, kia tātou mai o tō tātou ariki, e u koraisi me kia roa kia atua, e te tūki tātai i taka tu wai ua tapu, ake. E whana me tae te wāpea mo i rei kai e marana e wāpea kotina kore, mea te rei, ake. Āpene! Āpene!